Have me sign a weird contract or I fail. Okay. Last semester I had to take a class from a professor who wasn't bad as being incompetent, but definitely was one of those "I have a new way to teach that I developed" kind of professors. She also gave the vaguest instructions on what she did want in her turned-in work, and didn't believe in study guides as she wanted to encourage reading the material. Honestly, I got more out of the book than her class, and buying the book alone would have been far cheaper. Trying to get direction out of this lady was worse than trying to pull teeth. Met with mostly, "Do your best." On top of this, she apparently handed out a grading contract on the first day to everyone we had to sign and return. I missed this due to being sick, so I didn't get it until later. Said contract basically boiled down to indicating what grade you wanted at the start of the semester. You either met the conditions for that grade, or you would fail. So basically, by saying you wanted an A, you either met the qualifications for an A or you would fail, even if you could have got an A, B, or C instead. If you decided to play it safe with saying you wanted a C, even if you exceeded and would normally get a B or a, you would just get a C. So to cut out a lot of the drama of the semester. Two things. First being I had surgery at the beginning of the semester. Second is I was working full-time while at school to pay for said school. Both ended up with me missing a lot of work. And normally I would just cut my losses, except I am very close to my degree and my professor said I could make up the work. Otherwise I would fail and need to retake the class anyway in the spring. So I decided I had nothing to lose and buckled down with basically getting next to no sleep for weeks. I had over a month and a half at least amount of work and 2 weeks to do it in. Now, finally, this is where the malicious compliance comes in. During an exchange where I was emailing my work, she told me I still hadn't done her contract, which at that point, only a few weeks out from finals, I didn't get the point. But she told me either I did the contract or I would fail. She also had let slip that not doing the final would drop you a letter grade, but not fail you. The only exception to her weird contract that wasn't in it, and one I confirmed very deliberately in writing. At this point I was bone tired, and honestly forcing myself to continue working on anything, which may not sound like much, but with my mental health history was Herculean effort. I just wanted the pain to stop and a full night's rest. So I decided if not doing the final just dropped me by a letter grade, then I would just do the work for a B and end up with the grade one thought was fair for how the semester had gone. This meant for even more work, but it also meant I didn't need to worry about a final and could finally just sleep, which I explained as much to the professor when she asked me why I didn't have a final turned in on the last day. That so far has been the last I ever spoke to or seen of her. Imagine my surprise when I actually ended up with an B in her class. Personally, I take this to be her never wanting me in her class again. And I don't know if it makes me a bitch overall, but I do know she apparently has it now. Not doing the final is an automatic D. So sorry to anyone who got her after me. That whole thing is insane. I fully expect her grading policy would be shot down in a heartbeat if anyone appealed a grade. Either make what you want, or take an arbitrary F? Not a grade based on your actual work? That's not how grades are supposed to work. I know tenure makes dumb people do even more stupid things, but that seems like something I'd be reporting to anyone and everyone that will listen. Department head and higher up, local papers, social media, etc. Make her such a skid mark on the school's name that they have to intervene to stop the idiocy. It's not your fault that you were smart. Not doing the final and still being able to pass is such a big loophole. It's surprising that she didn't consider it, but she sounds pretty silly, so it also doesn't surprise me. That contract sounds dumb AF, and very likely in violation of university policy. I get that it's not necessarily a fight you want to take on. But someone should challenge that, because that is ridiculous unless it's a game theory class. And even then, it shouldn't dictate your entire grade. You seem to be in the US. US colleges have established rules, and a contract like this probably violates school policy. The syllabus is the professor's contract with the students. Take the syllabus and additional contract to the department chair and ask them to review it. I had a professor who would drop your lowest test score, including the final. A lot of students who were happy with their grade going into the final wouldn't show up and take the 0 as the lowest score. It got dropped, and that is one less final for the teacher to grade. This story reads like stereo instructions. I'm a professor who uses contract grading in my graduate level course. Sounds like she didn't understand contract grading. Those who can't teach should only be allowed to teach gym, and on a limited basis. Maybe I'm missing something, but how is this any different than someone not taking a final because they know they have enough credit to get the grade they want? How does the "perform to your predicted grade" weird policy factor into what OP did? I've heard of this method before. Basically, if you say you're aiming for a C, the teacher will grade everything much more laxly. E.g., getting an A on a paper just means A from the perspective of pursuing C-level work. So getting B's on your work when you're pursuing an A is fine, because it's from the perspective of grading at the highest level. By the sounds of it, the system wasn't fully implemented though, so I can see how it might go off the rails. That, or you didn't fully understand, which would be fine. You missed orientation due to a medical issue after all. I was in a class with contract grading last semester, and while there is a lot about it that I think is an overall improvement, much nicer to treat assignments as pass, fail instead of worrying about each individual point. Contracting for a B might mean you can just choose not to do some assigned work if you don't have time, don't want to, etc. But it's all about implementation, and it sounds like this professor didn't do very well with that. College professors on a power trip suck. Incompetent professors on a power trip are the worst. In college I struggled with Calculus 101. Math is not one of my strong suits. Took it 4 times before passing. Second to last round I got an awesome professor who knew my old math teacher from middle school. After the first test, I wasn't passing, but kept coming to class and taking the tests after dropping the class. Next semester I got an absolutely abysmal waste of tenured space for a professor. After the first test, I went to the math office in tears. And who is there? Awesome professor. I wasn't the first student in that day about abysmal professor either. Short of it, got transferred out of abysmal professors' class and into awesome professor's 7:30 a.m. class. I passed, graduated, and could always find parking because it was so early. Tears of joy. I taught for several years at a big American university as a graduate student. Grades could be challenged, and after going through a few steps in department, the final step in the process was a review board composed of half students, half professors. This would have been laughed out of the room by both sides and the professor forced to change the grades and the policies. Just about every aspect of this is unenforceable and doesn't align with guidelines for higher education. That isn't a professor looking for a creative way to motive. That is a professor looking for a power trip over her students. Moreover, one can't be bound by an unsigned contract. Any student with a functioning brain cell should have never entered into such a contract without seeking advice of counsel, and not necessarily that of a lawyer. Report it to the university. I had a teacher that did a very similar thing for our grades. It was an English class where we had to read essays and then basically write our opinions on them and analyze them. All he could really grade us on was proper grammar and formatting, which he said he didn't care about. His method was to Google your essay and make sure it wasn't copied in any way. As long as it was the proper page length, you would get at least a C. If it was copied, instant failure of the class and reported. If it was amazing, he would actually grade it based on the value of the content. I think this was just an easy way for him to get through everything since he had several hundred students. I managed to get a B+ though, so no complaints here. That's a horrible way to run a class. But she wanted to try something and she stuck with it. I've had plenty of professors who say, the syllabus is a binding contract when you miss something, but are quick to change it or throw something out as a mistake when it suits them. It sounds like it was a learning experience for her. This goes against what she laid out. So basically by saying you wanted an A, you either met the qualifications for an A or you would fail. Even if you could have got an A, B or C instead. That means that this. She also had let slip that not doing the final would drop you a letter grade, but not fail you, is wrong. Or the original statement is wrong. There is no in between. Lol. I've had a few crazy professors like this. My favorite is the one who caused me to drop my physics major. He required the use of math that was not a prereq for physics I. Vector algebra. Refused to teach it, so no one understood what the hell he was talking about except the small handful of students who had previously taken vector algebra, since he was using a math system that is very different from what most people are familiar with. To make things more fun, he also refused to give partial credit. This meant his exams were 4 questions long with complicated calculations and you were not allowed to use a calculator. If you misplaced a decimal, then you lost 25% on the grade. Any answer other than the exact final correct answer meant 25% off, even if you did everything right, except a small stupid math mistake. At one point, he even proudly told the class of how he had failed entire classes multiple times. I barely passed the class even though I had come in having done AP Physics and came up just shy of getting the college credit for it on the exam. TBH. I understood the concept less after he taught them than going in because he confused me so much. I went on to get a CE degree instead that required additional classes that I did really well in, and I ended up talking to the head of department a year or 2 later while in one of his classes and told him how I'd dropped the major because of that experience. He admitted that they had an enrollment crisis every time that particular professor came up to teach Physics I. What it came down to is he wanted Physics I to be an advanced physics class even though the prereqs and intent behind it wasn't to be that. He refused to teach to the intent of the course and instead went his own way, leading to people noping out of that degree.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.